Committee on Homeland Security will come to order. Without objection, the chair may declare committee in recess at any point. Purpose of today's hearing is conduct oversight of the Department of Homeland Security and assess priorities for calendar year 2026 for the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, Transportation Security Administration, and Science and Technology Directorate. Chair reminds all members that the chair will enforce the rules of decorum at all times and urges all members to be mindful of their remarks. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good morning, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. Today, we are conducting oversight of the Department of Homeland Security, focusing on TSA, CISA, and the Science and Technology Directorate, otherwise known as S&T. Nearly 25 years ago, 19 hijackers exploited significant vulnerabilities in our commercial aviation system. The Al-Qaeda terrorist attack on September 11, 2001 killed nearly 3,000 Americans and changed our nation forever. Our transportation system, among other critical systems, demanded accountability and hardened security to ensure a horrific event would never happen again. In response, Congress enacted the Aviation and Transportation Security Act to establish TSA and grant DHS flexible operational authority, allowing it to prepare for and respond to an ever-evolving threat landscape. Over the past 2 decades, threats facing our nation's aviation, transportation, and critical infrastructure have only risen. Today's risks are far more diverse, complex, and technologically advanced, and the motivations and methods of our adversaries have shifted rapidly with emerging technologies. Threats posed by lone wolf actors, radicalized individuals, and homegrown extremists have only increased. Transnational criminal organizations pose a significant threat by exploiting the transportation system to traffic humans, drugs, weapons, and illicit goods. Traditional terror tactics have given way to more sophisticated methods of attack. Cybersecurity is now at the forefront of these conversations, with adversaries attempting to take down our transportational systems through digital means. Similarly, the potential for coordinated attacks using drones to disrupt flights or deliver explosives represents a new and growing frontier of security threats. Sophisticated foreign adversaries, including the People's Republic of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, are actively targeting our digital systems that underpin essential services, economic activity, and national security. These state-directed campaigns are designed to position hostile actors for strategic disruption and coercion. Rapid advances in emerging technologies, including AI, are further accelerating the scale, speed, and sophistication of these cyber operations. In cyberspace, the United States is operating in a highly contested environment. Congress created CISA to serve as the nation's lead civilian cyber defense agency to meet this reality. CISA's responsibilities included securing federal civilian networks, supporting owners and operators of critical infrastructure, and coordinating with the private sector to reduce systemic cyber risk. That mission has grown more consequential as adversaries become more capable, patient, and willing to operate inside U.S. networks for extended periods of time. CISA's authorities extend across a variety of sectors, including energy, water, communications, healthcare, transportation, and financial services. This committee has been clear about CISA's expectations. It is not a policy, think tank, nor a messaging agency. Its mandate is operational. When that mandate is carried out with discipline and focus, the agency earns bipartisan support in Congress and confidence from the industry. When it does not, that confidence erodes. Over the past year, CISA has faced real operational challenges. Those challenges include rapidly evolving threat landscape, the scope of the agency's responsibility in an increasingly digital world, and organizational adjustments. As with any agency responsible for our national security, it is critical these changes do not degrade readiness, responsiveness, or mission delivery. This committee supports the administration's goal of aligning department resources towards urgent Homeland Security priorities. At the same time, workforce continuity, clear leadership, and mission readiness are essential to effective cyber defenses. Professionals at CISA are some of the most experienced cybersecurity experts in the federal government, and preserving that expertise must remain a priority. We're encouraged by the President's decision to renominate Mr. Sean Planke as Director of CISA. Mr. Planke is a respected national security professional with decades of experience. His confirmation will provide long-needed stability and strategic direction at CISA, which has operated without it for far too long. This committee's oversight of CISA is grounded in respect for its mission and confidence in its workforce. Lastly, several major high-profile events are set to unfold across the U.S., including the 2026 FIFA World Cup, America 250, and the 2028 LA Olympics. These events will only increase the volume and complexity of threats facing the Homeland, and DHS must be prepared to respond. The Trump administration, to its credit, has taken strong steps to prioritize strengthening our nation's security systems. However, modernization of TSA, CISA, and S&T will require sustained congressional support. As chairman of Homeland Security Committee, it is my priority to ensure we support and invest in the next generation of technologies and adopt highly innovative and effective security approaches, given the challenges facing the department and our country. This hearing provides an important opportunity to assess how TSA, CISA, and S&T are carrying out their missions. We look forward to hearing from our witnesses and engaging in constructive dialogue about how Congress can effectively support security, operational excellence, and accountability across the department. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our DHS personnel who keep us safe every day, including our dedicated cybersecurity professionals, our innovative researchers and scientists, and our brave TSA security officers who work on the front lines to protect the traveling public and who continue to do so even without pay during the nation's longest shutdown last year. I'm confident that by working together, we can break through the challenges of today and prepare for threats of tomorrow. The stakes for the American people could not be higher. Thank you. I now recognize the ranking member, a gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for 5 minutes for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for holding today's hearing on oversight of the Department of Homeland Security. Congressional Republicans' oversight of the Trump administration has been dismal this Congress. Republicans have had administration witnesses before this committee the fewest times in any recent administration's first year. Most of that was on the watch of the prior chairman, who was, to my favorite phase of his, derelict in his duty to bring Trump administration officials before the committee. This hearing is a step in the right direction. The Trump administration has created serious issues at TSA, CISA, and DHS, S&T that need to be addressed. Committee Democrats are committed to taking a hard look at those issues, from President Trump's slashing the CISA workforce to Secretary Kristi Noem's unlawful rescinding union rights for frontline transportation security officers, to the administration cutting programs that leverage university-based research to address critical Homeland Security challenges. But none of those things can be the sole focus of our oversight right now, because President Trump and Secretary Noem have weaponized DHS against the American people and are wreaking havoc in Minneapolis and other communities across this country. It's an absolute disgrace that ICE isn't here today in wake of the shooting death of Renee Good at the hands of an ICE agent. Mr. Chairman, as you know, I've asked for ICE Acting Director Lyons to appear at today's hearing. I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record my letter to you dated January 14th, 2026, requesting Acting Directors Lyons appear before the committee without delay. I want to thank you for issuing that invitation, but committee Democrats and I are outraged that ICE refused to appear today. Ms. Good was a wife, mother of 3 young children, a devout Christian, and a U.S. citizen. We all seen the shooting video with our own eyes. Ms. Good certainly did not deserve to be killed by her own government. She should be alive today. Mr. Chairman, At this time, I ask for a moment of silence in memory of Renee Good. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, in the wake of Ms. Good's killing, ICE has an obligation to appear and answer members' questions. Her tragic killing needs to be thoroughly investigated, and everyone involved, from the ICE officer who pulled the trigger to the president and secretary who sent them to Minneapolis, must be held accountable. DHS also needs to be held accountable for its out of control immigration operation, creating chaos in communities like Los Angeles, Chicago, New Orleans, and Minneapolis, terrorizing people from all walks of life and hurting U.S. citizens and immigrants alike. Mr. Chairman, in order to ensure that ICE appears before the committee, pursuant to Clause 2J1 of House Rule 11, I'm providing you with a letter signed by every Democratic member of the committee requesting testimony from Acting Director Lyons. I ask unanimous consent that this Minority Day letter be submitted for the record. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I understand that you intend to hold a series of oversight hearings with DHS officials. I look forward to ICE being before the committee at our next hearings. Democrats insist on that. Never has oversight and accountability been more necessary than it is now. President Trump and Secretary Noem are doing real damage to this country and to the department that was stood up in the wake of 9/11 to protect Americans from future attacks. Unfortunately, President Trump and Secretary Noem have established a corrupt, above the law culture at DHS, and Noem has enriched herself and her allies at taxpayers' expense. She has awarded multiple no-bid contracts to close associates and siphoned $240 million of taxpayers' money to companies connected to her top advisor and close confidant, Corey Lewandowski, as well as to her spokesperson husband. She fast-tracked a contract worth almost $1 billion to a company led by a Trump donor, and she's living rent-free in the U.S. Coast Guard housing designated for military members. She has also abused her power as secretary. She's acknowledged cherry-picking, which court orders departments will comply with, contrary to the rule of law. She's used access to disaster funds to punish political foes, illegally withholding congressionally authorized disaster funds. She has obstructed congressional oversight, barring members from visiting ICE detention facilities and refusing to respond to oversight letters and requests. In short, she has enriched herself, abused the power of her office, obstructed congressional oversight, and violated her oath of office to the Constitution. Never has oversight of the Department of Homeland Security been more important, and never has holding an administration accountable been more necessary. Be assured that accountability is coming. Accountability is coming, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I am pleased to have highly distinguished panel witnesses before us today, and as the ranking member knows, we have talked about doing other oversight hearings, and that is the intent of this committee to do what Congress is meant to do and conduct oversight. And I'm pleased today that we have our first panel of DHS officials here. DHS is a big department, and there should be several of these, and we will have several of these. Pursuant to Committee Rule 8C, I ask that the witnesses please rise and raise their right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you all. Please be seated. I would now like to formally introduce our witnesses. Mr. Pedro Allende is Undersecretary for Science and Technology, leading the department's research and development efforts and serving as science advisor to the Secretary. Previously, he served as Florida's Secretary of Management Services and has held roles at DHS and the Department of Energy and Labor. Mr. Madhu Gottumukkala serves as the Acting Director and Deputy Director for the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, a role in which he helps to lead CISA's mission to understand, manage, and reduce risk to cyber and physical infrastructure. Prior to his appointment, he served as the Commissioner and Chief Information Officer for South Dakota's Bureau of Information and Technology. Ms. Nguyen McNeill is Deputy Administrator of the Transportation Security Agency, a role in which she is performing the duties of administrator to advance TSA's mission to secure the nation's transportation system and improve operational effectiveness. Previously, she served as Acting President, Commercial, and Vice President of Digital Identity Growth at Big Bear AI. Ms. McNeill also served as TSA Chief of Staff from 2017 to 2019. Thank all the witnesses for being here today. I now recognize Mr. Allende for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am honored to serve as Undersecretary for Science and Technology at the Department of Homeland Security, and I appreciate the committee's continued oversight and engagement with our work. The Science and Technology Directorate plays a unique role within DHS. We are the department's research, development, test, and evaluation organization, responsible for anticipating emerging threats, identifying technology opportunities, and ensuring that DHS components have access to solutions that are timely, effective, and responsible. Our work is grounded in the simplest measure of success, whether technology transitions into the real-world use are effectuated, and whether they measurably improve mission outcomes. In my short tenure as Undersecretary, I've focused on listening to the operators across the department to understand where technology is helping today, where it can help fill certain gaps. Those conversations reinforce a consistent message. Technology must be operationally relevant. It must be rigorously tested and delivered with discipline. Research alone is not enough. Capability must reach the operators in the field. To meet that standard, S&T works closely with the components from the earliest stages of development, and we assess emerging threats, evaluate existing commercial solutions, and apply systems engineering and test and evaluation to reduce risk before acquisition decisions are made. When a private sector solution can meet mission needs, that is our preference. We prioritize adopting those solutions and adapting them in order to accelerate delivery to the field, and frankly, to steward taxpayer dollars effectively and responsibly. At the same time, the threat environment facing our homeland is increasingly dynamic and technology-driven. From unmanned aircraft systems to cyber-enabled threats, to risks to critical infrastructure, S&T's role is to look ahead while supporting today's operations. And that means engaging with industry, with academia, national laboratories and FFRDCs, and interagency partners to ensure that DHS remains prepared for the future without losing focus of today's challenges. Ultimately, my goal as Undersecretary is to ensure that S&T remains a trusted partner to DHS components, one that delivers capabilities that work in the field, supports informed decision-making, and strengthens the security of the American homeland. I look forward to discussing our work with the committee this morning and to answering your questions. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Gottumukkala for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Madhu Gottumukkala, and I serve as the Acting Director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. Before joining the federal government, I oversaw statewide technology and cybersecurity operations for the state of South Dakota. Earlier in my career, I worked across the wireless, telecom, and health technology sectors. Those experiences shaped how I approached the role with a practical understanding of how state and local governments and critical infrastructure operators experience risk on the ground. I'm honored that the President and Secretary Noem asked me to lead this agency. Since arriving last May, I have been proud to see the professionalism, talent, and deep mission commitment of the CISA workforce each and every day. I'm also grateful for this committee's continued bipartisan support and for the authorities Congress has provided to enable CISA's mission. Over the past year, and under President Trump's leadership and Secretary Noem's guidance, CISA has remained squarely focused on the mission Congress intended when the agency was established, that is, supporting, strengthening, and securing the nation's critical infrastructure from cyber and physical threats. That mission is operational and outcome-driven. Every day, CISA's people work to protect the financial systems, safeguard pipelines, and ensure the digital and physical infrastructure Americans rely on can withstand disruption. In 2025, CISA made meaningful progress in an increasingly aggressive threat environment. We strengthened our ability to detect and respond to cyber threats, deepened collaboration across government and industry, and shared threat information and mitigation guidance faster and in more integrated ways. As a result, CISA supported more than 4,000 victims of cyber incidents, published over 1,600 cybersecurity products, shared more than 2,500 threat and incident reports, and triaged over 30,000 incidents through our 24/7 operations center. These efforts reduced real-world impact and helped ensure Americans could continue to rely on the essential services. As the operational lead for federal civilian cybersecurity, CISA worked very closely with departments and agencies to promote risk-based policies and best practices to respond to the evolving threats. In 2025, we issued 3 emergency directives to address critical vulnerabilities and cyber threats. We also scaled the endpoint detection and response technology to over 60 agencies and more than 500,000 endpoints, giving analysts near real-time visibility to detect and stop those advanced threats. In early 2025 alone, CISA blocked more than 1.7 billion malicious connections on federal networks, including 142 million targeting the critical infrastructure. CISA also continued delivering security directly to the state, local, tribal, and territorial governments, a mission that is very personal to me given my time serving in the state level. With a nationwide presence across the 10 regions, we provided tailored training, technical assistance, and planning support, recognizing that many of our partners operate with limited budgets and staffing. To help address this, in August 2025, the Department of Homeland Security released funding opportunities under the state and local cybersecurity grant program and the tribal cybersecurity grant program, making available over $100 million to help reduce the cybersecurity risk nationwide. Physical security remains a no-fail mission for the agency. In fiscal year 2025, CISA delivered more than 1,000 counter-IED and risk mitigation training courses to over 26,000 participants, strengthening the preparedness, awareness, and also the response capabilities. We are also actively preparing for the major national and international events, including the FIFA World Cup, America 250, and the 2028 Olympic Games. In April, CISA convened more than 730 participants from over 40 agencies at the Lincoln Financial Field for a full-scale exercise of the World Cup. That exercise produced concrete improvements in coordination, communication, and public safety. As we enter 2026, CISA is executing a mission-first approach. We are launching targeted initiatives to close the most pressing risk gaps facing the critical infrastructure, particularly where cyber threats intersect with real-world consequences. We are prioritizing what works, eliminating duplication, and ensuring that every product and service directly advances CISA's regulatory mission and aligns with the administration's goals of efficiency, accountability, and impact. This includes incorporating the industry and congressional feedback into the final rule for the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act. It also includes modernizing how we engage with critical infrastructure partners by replacing CPAC with a more streamlined and effective engagement framework. Finally, we recognize that a disciplined mission requires the right workforce, not a larger one, but a more capable and a skilled one. In 2026, CISA will continue targeted hiring in mission-critical roles while remaining aligned with the broader efforts to control costs and maximize return. Under President Trump's leadership and Secretary Noem's guidance, CISA remains committed to being a focused, efficient, and accountable agency, one that executes the mission Congress assigned and delivers real security outcomes for the American people. Thank you again for your support, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gottumukkala. I now recognize Ms. McNeill for 5 minutes to summarize her opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to testify before you today on behalf of the Transportation Security Administration. I'm honored to be here and grateful for the longstanding and productive partnerships TSA shares with this committee and Congress. I would like to start by thanking TSA employees for their unrelenting efforts day in and day out to secure the nation's transportation systems. TSA is an agile security agency embodied by a dedicated and professional workforce that work around the clock to outmatch an increasingly sophisticated and dynamic threat. TSA's greatest assets is its people, and I want to sincerely thank them. From our transportation security officers and canine handlers to our federal air marshals, these men and women embody the agency's core values. They work through the longest government shutdown in American history, many without pay and experiencing personal financial hardships. Their commitment to the TSA mission and to the traveling public is unparalleled. Under the leadership of President Trump and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, TSA is laser-focused on delivering for the American people. The upcoming World Cup, America 250, and 2028 Olympics present an enormous opportunity to boldly transform transportation security in the United States and usher in President Trump's vision for a new golden age of travel. Achieving these priorities starts with deploying upgraded, state-of-the-art technology to our over 430 commercial airports nationwide, focusing on our core mission of transportation security and harnessing our collective investment power and innovation through robust public-private partnerships. Last year, passenger volumes at airports reached record highs, recording 8 out of the top 10 busiest days in TSA's history. In 2025, TSA screened 907 million passengers, 480 million checked bags, and 2.1 billion carry-on bags. With the transportation sector remaining a top target for bad actors and continued year-over-year passenger volume growth, it is more critical than ever to have a technologically advanced, seamless, and secure aviation system. I would like to thank the committee for its strong support of the agency's critical aviation security programs, including 2 I would like to highlight. First, the Screening Partnership Program, through which TSA is working closely with airports and industry to incentivize investment in more tailored, innovative solutions to strengthen security. And second, the One-Stop Security Pilot Program, which significantly improves international aviation security and streamlines the transfer process for passengers inbound to the US with a connecting flight. In addition to strong partnerships, we must invest in modernizing our security technology. One avenue to achieving this is for Congress to expand the amount and scope of the Aviation Security Capital Fund. Starting in 2004, Congress authorized the first $250 million in revenue collected each year from the passenger security fee to go to TSA's capital fund to be used for checked baggage technology. That amount has not been adjusted or raised in 21 years, with the next $1.6 billion in the fee revenue going to annual national deficit reduction. If Congress were to return the funds collected to be used for its intended purpose, passenger security, and expand it to include checkpoint technology, TSA could significantly shorten its technology deployment timeframes, improving both security and the passenger experience. TSA is committed to making the airport experience smooth and stress-free for the traveling public, including military personnel and American families traveling with children. Last year, we established the Serve with Honor, Travel with Ease program, which provides screening lanes for active duty military personnel and their families, as well as the Families on the Fly program, which dedicated lanes for families. With the strong leadership of President Trump and Secretary Noem, coupled with continued support from Congress and industry partners, we can transform aviation security and return America to being the world's #1 travel destination. Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson, and distinguished members of the committee, it is a privilege to testify before you today. I thank you for your support of TSA and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. McNeill. The committee I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions, but I want to, because it's an oversight hearing and I want to make sure everybody can ask their questions. I will entertain unanimous consent at the end, like we did last time. So We will accept them all, just we want to do it at the end, so there's enough time for everyone to ask questions, because we do have a 2 o'clock, very important 2 o'clock hearing that Chairman Guest is running, so I want to make sure that that starts on time as well. So I will start. Dr. Gottumukkala, it's been a year now in the Trump administration, and there's been some major shakeups at CISA, specifically with some RIFs, and there's been a lot of changes. And but the agency still remains responsible for defending the federal civilian networks, supporting state and local partners, and coordinating with critical infrastructure sectors under sustained targeting by foreign adversaries. I have said it publicly, I know a lot of other members on this committee have said it publicly, that any organizational restructuring must reinforce CISA's ability to execute its core mission and should be done so in coordination with Congress. There have been reports that there are planned reorganization efforts for CISA. Can you please describe what, if any, organizational changes you as acting director are planning to make in the months ahead, and if there are any that you have already done?
Chairman Garbarino, thank you for the question. I want to start by saying that CISA is trying to get back on its mission, which is protecting the critical infrastructure security from physical and cyber threats. CISA is a young agency, and we have grown, and as we continue to mature, and as we are rescoping, as you have suggested, sir, we do have a lot of changes in the last year, but we do not have or planned any organizational changes. And but we are continuing to look at how we rescope our existing work that we have, and so that we can get back on our mission of protecting the critical infrastructure. And if there is any organizational changes, I will assure that we will communicate with you.
So as of now, you don't have any planned reorganizational changes that will be coming to CISA?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And I just wanted to reiterate, you just said you will be sure to notify Congress of any intents to reorganize CISA.
Absolutely, sir. We want to make sure that our resources are aligned with the statutory authorities that you have given us, and we will make sure that we'll work with you.
Wonderful. Do you have the proper staffing right now to fulfill CISA's mission?
Chairman Gardner, thank you for the question. We have the staff that we need for the mission that we want to protect. So yes, we have, and like any other situation, we do have our regular attrition. We use our hiring authorities to make sure that we go back and get back to our mission, and we are protecting the nation every single day.
And you are in the process of hiring for specific positions right now?
We have, we always use our hiring authorities that we have, sir, and we are making sure that we have the right skills and the right talent that we need across our mission areas.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to follow up also, the Cyber Incident Reporting Critical Infrastructure Act, or CIA, was signed into law nearly 4 years ago. I was one of the co-leads on it. And the final regulations were supposed to be in October of 2025. The deadline has now slipped to May 2026. I'm happy with that, actually, because a lot of us did not like what was coming out of the rulemaking. There was supposed to be, I remember the secretary last year said that there was going to be possible ex parte process to update the rule. I just want to know where is CISA right now in the rulemaking? Has there been an ex parte process? Are they getting closer to the congressional intent that we had when we passed the bill originally?
Chairman Garbino, thank you for the question. The CIRCIA that you are referring to, the Cyber Incident Reporting for the Critical Infrastructure Act of 2022, what it does, sir, is it requires the covered critical infrastructure entities to report any significant cyber incidents, ransomware payments to CISA, so the government can identify threats faster and assist victims more effectively, and be able to warn others before the attacks are spread.
I'm going to interrupt you because I'm running out of time, but I want to make sure. Is it on schedule to come out, and have you been working with the private sector to address the concerns that came out in the original rulemaking process?
Chairman Garbino, absolutely, we are working very hard to make sure that we are getting towards the closure line. We did not miss the deadline due to inaction. It was a deliberate decision driven by substance. Some of the key drivers are we have about 280 plus detailed public comments, and we have the stakeholder engagement that is ongoing and extensive. And we want to make sure that the protection for companies is there, and we are making sure that there is not a burden on the people that are making those requirements.
I appreciate it. I've run out of time. I now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Kind of taking off on where you started off with respect to CISA staffing. Congressman McCall and myself supported CISA becoming a part of DHS for all the right reasons. And you said there are no organizational changes, that you're able to accomplish the mission. How many vacancies do you have right now in CISA?
So our headcount as of ranking member, thank you again. Question for we have about 2,400 plus employees at CISA, and we have the required workforce that does the mission support every day.
I need the numbers. How many are you short?
We have the normal attrition like any other federal agency, sir, which is 7.5% approximately this past year. And that is significantly less than the previous prior years and as compared to the other federal agencies as well. But in general, we have the required authorities to make sure that we go back to our hiring authorities and be able to hire the required talent.
I appreciate it, but your staff has been cut by 1/3. Is that not true?
Ranking Member Thompson, what we had is a workforce transition program, and people who left the organization, they participated voluntarily. And we have the required staff that is supporting the mission that we do.
I'm sure you're going to say that, but I'm just trying to get to a number that you started with and what the president cut. I mean, it should be easy for you to just come up and say, I lost 1/3 of my people, but I'm able to accomplish the mission.
Understood, sir. Ranking Member Thompson, the way, let me clarify this. As of January 20th, 2025, our CISA workforce was 3,389 plus. At the end of December, we were at 2,389. And we have the workforce transition, like I said, and we have the normal attrition. But like I said, the way we are supporting back on mission is to make sure that we are protecting our critical infrastructure from physical and cyber threats, and our divisions are properly equipped, and we are making sure that we are aligning our existing resources to the rest.
Thank you very much. But you provided a November memo that said, contrary to what you're telling the committee, so we will send a letter to you asking for the specific numbers that you're short, and just tell us. That's the only thing. But this leads me to another issue, since you wouldn't give me the number that I asked. Are you aware that you reportedly failed a counterintelligence polygraph test?
Ranking Member Thompson, I do not accept the premise of that characterization. And I'm not going to discuss the testing outcomes or clearance matters in an open session. Those issues are handled through the DHS adjudication processes, which are currently underway.
Did you fail the test, yes or no?
So like I said, I do not accept the premise of that characterization, and I understand why people ask that question, and I'm mindful that situations like this affect people, which is why I'm respecting the process and keeping the mission steady, sir.
Yeah, but you know, you're in a very sensitive area, and CISA is important to us, and I think we need to have people who are in that space that pass the standard test. So, I mean, we'll pursue that a little later, but I was just looking for a yes or no answer. If you took the test and passed it, fine. If you didn't, that's a problem. But I can't get an answer one way or the other out of you, and we'll go forward with that. Are you aware of the chief information officers at CISA that you are at present trying to get rid of or have gotten rid of?
Ranking Member Thompson, thank you for the question. Individual personal matters are not made, the decisions are not made in vacuum. It is a leadership level at the highest levels. And we work according to how we see the roles fit, but I'm not here to comment on.
I understand. Last question, Mr. Chairman. Are you aware of a SCIF being planned and paid for by DHS to be built in South Dakota?
Ranking Member Thompson, thank you for the question. I don't know the full specifics of who is building, what is building, but I think it is not federally funded by us, which means we will probably be supporting in terms of like any other SCIF that we have, irrespective of what the location is.
So you don't know anything about it?
Yes, sir, of course, I know that there is propositions for a SCIF like any other location.
Mr. Chair, I'll follow up with some more questions for the witness. I yield back.
Chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Let me just say first, when I was chairman of this committee, 2015, we passed the Cyber Information Sharing Act. The ranking member and I did together. It's been a very bipartisan issue. 2018, we passed the Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency permanent authorization. And the reason why I'm going through this legislative history, it's very important to know what is still authorized today and what is not. One of the most critical pieces of CISA, as we imagined in Congress, was to share information with the private sector, not only to the private sector, but from the private sector, which holds about 80% of the cyber threat information. Would you agree with that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that was vitally important as the authors of this agency, and we had quite a battle with, I have to say, with House Intelligence over whether this should be warehoused under the National Security Agency, which is not a civilian agency to interact with the private sector. We thought a civilian agency would be the better fit. I like to think that we were right about that. But then the goal was to expand the capabilities so that you could meet those requirements. Do you feel that you have those capabilities today?
Sir, the CISA 2015, the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015 that you're referring to, it provides the legal foundation for cyber threat information sharing between the federal government and the private sector, and it remains one of the most important authorities for defending the U.S. Critical infrastructure against increasingly sophisticated cyber threats.
Okay. So now let me go back to the authorizations, because this is really important for the committee members to know that now CISA, the agency, was permanently authorized, so there's no expiration. However, there is one on the Cyber Information Sharing Act, which was brought about by a compromise with various members who would not vote for it unless we put that expiration term in there. So as of now, it is no longer authorized. It was temporarily reauthorized in the CR, which will expire January 30th. So if I could correct myself, it will expire on January 30th of this year. Mr. Garbarino and Mr. Thompson introduced a reauthorization that passed in the Homeland Approach Bill, but did not go to the Senate. It is not in the Homeland Approach that we're voting on this week. My question to you is, while you still have appropriations to the majority, I think, of your agency, I think if not all, to not be authorized, to have a lapse in authorization at this point in time where the cyber threat is far greater today than when Mr. Thompson and I first created the agency and the Information Sharing Act. In addition, coupled with the World Cup FIFA events coming up, the Olympics, and the anniversary or 250th anniversary of the Republic, how does that harm your efforts to protect the nation?
Congressman, thank you again. Like I said, I personally support, and DHS also supports the long-term reauthorization of the CISA 2015. And I understand that the act expires Jan 30th. And one of the strengths of CISA is the partnership and collaboration with the private sector. And the private sector understands that this will be extended through the continuing resolution. And like we have worked with Chairman Garbarino and the committee in the widespread information.
If I could, my time's going to expire, but this is not your fault. This is Congress's fault. And it's incumbent. I think the House has done its job, but the Senate has not done their job on this. And so it's vitally important, and this is a message to the Senate, that when we do pass this, again, that the Senate reauthorize your mission. Otherwise, your ability to collect 80% of the threat information from the private sector is gone. You're no longer authorized to do that by law. And so that is why that is so important, sir. And this is always, as Mr. Thompson knows, always been a bipartisan issue. I really hope, I don't have any doubt on my colleagues on the other side of the aisle or in the House, we're going to get this done, but the Senate, for the sake of the nation and our security, needs to act on this. It is highly irresponsible, and quite frankly, it's just downright dangerous what they're doing. And they're playing games with something that's very serious. And with that, I now recognize who's next. Yeah, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. Dr. Madhu, if I may, I wanted to follow up at some of the questions and thoughts, directions of the chairman and the ranking member. You said, correct me if I'm wrong, a third of your people have left voluntarily?
About 806 people, sir, yes.
Third. It was just stated from both sides of the aisle that the threat, cyber threat, is ever increasing. It's even worse now. When I go home, I get stories from local vendors that they've been hacked. I get stories that they're essentially being held to ransom because somebody from outside the country has got to them. From that level up to Colonial Pipeline, cyber threats everywhere. Your agency lost a third of their staff. We're about to vote on a bill that cuts your funding by about $270 million. Is that correct, sir? Yes, no, maybe? You're under oath, by the way.
Congressman, thank you. I appreciate the.
Yes or no?
I have to look, sir.
You haven't looked at it yet.
We have a president's budget of $2.5 billion.
Are we about to cut your budget by $270 million? Vote to do that. Are we, yes or no? Yes or no?
I don't have.
We are. Just watch the votes the next couple of days. And yet you've said that you can still do your mission, your assignment to defend this country satisfactorily. Is that what you're saying? Yes or no?
Congressman.
Yes or no? Do we need more resources?
Congressman, we are.
Yes or no? Do you need more resources, sir? You're under oath.
Congressman.
Can you assure the public of this country that based on all these cuts, you've lost a third of your personnel, we're about to cut your budget, that you can still do your job? Yes or no?
Congressman, thank you for the question.
Yes or no?
Sir,
thank you very much. I've got 2.5 minutes left. If you could answer that to me in writing later on, I'd appreciate it. Ms. McNeill, thank you for being here today. Quick history. TSA, Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security was created as a result of 9/11, that cowardly attack on our country that cost us thousands of lives. We don't want to see that repeated again. If I remember correctly, hijackers, terrorists, broke into the cabin of a number of airline flights on that day, took command, control of airplanes, and used them as weapons against the United States. Is that correct, more or less?
That's correct.
Do you have the resources today to defend against something like that?
We do, sir. Since the establishment of TSA, we've taken a concerted, layered approach to aviation security.
Recently, if I may, reassignment of some of your personnel to ICE and CBP over the last year or so. Is that correct? You've lost about 250 air marshals who are randomly on airplanes, on commercial flights, to prevent another 9/11 from happening. Those folks are now assisting in ICE removals. Does that not concern you? Or you think you're still okay doing your job of defending this great country against another hijacking attack?
Yes, we do, Congressman, and the federal air marshals today are more agile than at any time before.
Well, they're agile, but do you have the personnel to actually carry out your mission?
Yes, and they are deployed based on risk on our flights. They also offer ground-based security, and yes, they do support our colleagues across DHS to advance the national security and transportation security mission. That includes our colleagues at ICE, as you mentioned, also the Secret Service.
If I may, I have less than half a minute left. If you can answer this question for me in writing, you're focused more on investment in technology. I like to focus on trained personnel. Sounds like we're cutting back in personnel and trying to focus more on technology. I think it's a combination of both. But if you can explain to me how we can assure this country, our citizens, that they are safer today than they were back in 9/11. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My time is up and I yield.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Guess, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. McNeill, thank you for being here. Thank you for the dedicated men and women who serve under your command. Particularly want to thank you in light that those men and women work for a period of 6 weeks without being paid, as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle chose to shut down the federal government. But they continue to come to work. They continue to protect the traveling people. So thank you for their professionalism, for their dedication, for their hard work, particularly in a time where you talk about in the statistics that you gave that last year passenger volume reached record high. You say in your opening statement that 8 of the 10 busiest traveling days were last year, and that the men and women who serve under TSA, that they screened over 906 million passengers, 480 million check bags, and 2.1 billion carry-on bags, all for 6 weeks without getting paid, continuing to do their duty to the traveling public. You also mentioned in your opening statements some challenges, opportunities that lie ahead. Those include the 2026 World Cup, where we know that people will be coming from across the globe to America to enjoy soccer in the World Cup being hosted here. America 250 also next year. And then 2028, we know that the Olympics will be held in California. And once again, we will have individuals coming from across the globe here, coming to America to enjoy those events. And so I want to talk a little bit about, and you mentioned this in your statement, I know this is something that is near and dear to the chairman, the passenger security fee diversion. For now, some 20 years, we've seen a diversion of those funds that were originally set up, $5.60 for a one-way ticket, $11.20 for a round-trip ticket, for reinvestment back into aviation security. We know that some 20 years ago, before most of us were here in Congress, that a decision was made to divert some of those fees And that diversion now totals roughly $1.6 billion a year. Also in your statement, not only we talk about the diversion of those fees, but we talk about the Aviation Security Capital Fund, which also was established some 20 some odd years ago. Originally, $250 million was set aside in revenue to screen luggage that is checked by passengers. And we've seen that that number has not increased now for 20 years. You talk about the fact that we are in need of, returning those diverted fees back to TSA, putting that money back into aviation security, which is what it was created for. And you also talk in your opening statement about the need to increase the Aviation Security Capital Fund. So I want to give you just a minute, if you could, to expound on both of those.
Absolutely. And Congressman, I thank you for recognizing the workforce, because seeing them turn up day in and day out throughout that government shutdown was nothing short of inspiring. And they kept our skies safe for the traveling public, and did so with absolute commitment to the TSA mission. It is our responsibility to ensure that they have the best tools at their disposal to do the job that we are asking them to do. And that is why investment in technology is so critical. We are facing year-over-year volume growth at our checkpoints in infrastructure-constrained environments. The only way that we're going to be able to maintain our security posture and improve our security posture and deliver an increasingly improved passenger experience is through that combination of our human talent and technology. And that is what we are looking to work with this Congress to do, to ensure that the Passenger Security Fund is used for those purposes. I would say that there are several different buckets of technology advancements that we would want to ensure that we're investing in. One is that cutting-edge screening technology at the checkpoint that we all experience when we fly through the airports, making sure that that is detecting threats adequately as we face an evolving adversary and threat environment. Second is around identity verification, right? One of the cornerstones of our aviation security system is knowing who is coming through our checkpoints and doing that adequate vetting so we know who they are before they even show up. And then third is really bringing our checkpoint into the 21st century and providing that IT infrastructure so that we can really drive improvements on a continual basis to our checkpoints.
Ms. McNeill, thank you. My time has expired. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Tanadar, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for this hearing. Ms. McNeill, I have the honor of representing Detroit Metro Airport, Michigan's busiest airport and one of the largest airline hubs in the world. Given that I represent Detroit, which prides itself on its long history of blue-collar contributions to our great nation, you must also know that I am a strong supporter of unions, organized labor, and collective bargaining rights. In March, TSA announced it would be stripping the collective bargaining rights through the American Federation of Government Employees for TSA personnel, but was blocked by the courts. In December, TSA tried again to strip collective bargaining rights and were again blocked by the courts. Earlier last year, you were questioned regarding the role of TSA and if you believed that TSA should be privatized. You said that nothing is off the table. In July, TSA announced it would be seeking private sector assistance for the development and deployment of turnkey solutions for use at the airport security checkpoints. Many speculate that this announcement means that the TSA is seeking to replace its personnel with private sector security, a common union-busting tactics. Ms. McNeill, I have very little time, so just a yes or no question. Do you value the work of our hardworking TSA personnel?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. Yes, absolutely. And in my opening statement, I stated that TSA's greatest assets are its people.
Now, if you believe that their work is so valuable, Why are you seeking to make their jobs harder by getting rid of collective bargaining rights, which would help them with job security, safe working conditions, and ensuring accountability in the workplace?
The existence of a collective bargaining agreement is inconsistent with the mission that TSA has to perform and the agility with which we need to run this agency. And our employees know that, and actually the accountability of ensuring that we don't have 200 personnel that are doing non-screening work is in place, and returning them to the checkpoint is actually better for our employees and the morale.
Well,
We hear
look,
time and
this-
again.
Look, this is hardworking men and women.
Yes, they
They're
are.
it's a very stressful environment. They do their best to work as hard as to keep America safe. Look, it is a fact that workforce morale and retention increased significantly since the Biden administration expanded bargaining rights. The move to end collective bargaining rights is wrong, and I look forward to the courts to continue to block these attempts to harm the workplace rights of our nation's workers. Now, while I appreciate the TSA workers working so hard, I kept hitting a video that was kept showing every time I'm crossing the TSA line. Ms. McNeill, in October, a video of Secretary Noem blaming the government shutdown on Democrats aired at TSA checkpoints across the country. As I am sure you know, this was a blatant violation of the Hatch Act, which bars partisan activity using government resources. It also violates the Anti-Deficiency Act, which prohibits federal agencies from spending funds beyond what Congress has appropriated, since the TSA was operating without funds at the time. Ms. McNeill, why did you allow these blatantly political charged videos to play at TSA checkpoints across our country?
Our responsibility at TSA is in part to inform the traveling public of what they can expect when they arrive at our checkpoints. And during the longest government shutdown, that was absolutely necessary to ensure that they understood the environment that they were coming into and the facts behind that environment. And the Secretary is very supportive of the TSA
I have
workforce and
just
our
a
mission.
little bit of time.
You have no time. Gentleman's time is expired.
Thank you.
And I recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Jimenez, for his 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you very much, and I'll try to keep this brief. Ms. O'Neill, have we ever had the capacity to put an air marshal on every single domestic flight in the United States?
The deployment of federal air marshals.
Yes or no? Have we ever had the capacity to put an air marshal on every single flight in the United States?
No, that is not.
No,
how we
okay,
operate.
that would be same as me as a fire chief, closing down a fire station every once in a while, then hoping a fire didn't happen in that area. So that's what I feel about the air marshal program. We're gonna have to have a lot more conversation about the air marshal program in the future. I don't have time right now. Second thing, Mr. Gottumukkala, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, sorry. Where does the Secretary of Homeland Security reside?
In the NCR region,
I think she's from South Dakota, okay? Don't you think that as a Secretary of Homeland Security, every once in a while she's gonna need access to a skiff? Yes, thank you. All right, now back to Ms. O'Neill. I don't represent an airport. I actually ran one, okay? As a mayor of Miami-Dade County, I ran Miami International Airport. And so airport security is really important to me. We talk about passenger fees and all that, and if we use the schedule you have right now, by what year are we going to have the things that you think are vital to our nation's security installed in all our airports?
At the current pace of funding, Congressman, for our computed tomography technology, we're looking at 2042 and our credential authentication by 2049.
2049. I hope I'm alive. I don't know. It's going to get close. Okay. So how do they fund these security measures in Europe?
In Europe, it's a vastly different construct than here in the United States. The regulatory bodies set the standards and put the requirements on the airports to.
That's right. They put it on the airports. You know why they put it on the airports? because they can get it done. All right? We're not going to get it done because we have fiscal constraints. So let me tell you how an airport works. Right? An airport decide in the beginning, the budget, what happens is, what is it that we need in order to operate this airport? And there's a number. And then after that, they go, okay, how do we attain that number? Well, they attain that number through passenger fees, landing fees, concessions, et cetera, because there's revenue that comes into the airport, and then they balance. So if we were to set the standards for what we believe we need to secure the American public, I think it would make a heck of a lot more sense for us to say the airports, because we're actually doing this for you, and the airport and the traveling public, et cetera, make it safe, which, by the way, if we make it unsafe and people don't travel by air anymore, it's an unbelievable economic impact on the United States. The #1 economic generator of Miami-Dade County is Miami International Airport. And I'm sure that in other communities around this country, the #1 economic generator is probably their airports. And I would, and I bet you, bottom dollar that in Atlanta for sure, okay, the #1 economic generator is the airport. Chicago probably too. New York, the 3 airports too. So why don't we use the European model? Why don't we tell the airports what they need to purchase? They will figure that into their budgets, finance it, and then give those assets over to us, which some airports do when they want to actually be a little bit ahead of the game. Isn't that correct?
We have great partnerships with airports across the country, and we have put in place several different ways for which airports can drive investment to their checkpoints. And we have a capability acceptance program where airports can essentially donate qualified equipment to TSA so that we can upgrade the equipment at the checkpoint. That, combined with appropriated funds and looking to improve programs like the Screening Partnership Program, allow us to provide options to airports on how to drive that investment. I'm a big believer in public-private partnerships. Like you said, airports are major economic engines of the community around them, and this should be an all-hands-on-deck approach, and we are an important part of that, and our partnerships are actually absolutely critical to advancing that.
And by the way, we divert a lot of what's supposed to be used for security to other purposes. The passenger security fee, which is supposed
annually about $1.6 billion.
Right, which when I pay a passenger security fee, I expect it to be used for passenger security and not to help balance the federal budget, which is what we do here, all right? And so I don't think we're gonna be able to solve that. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna be introducing legislation to change the way that we fund security at the airports, more like the European model, and so finally we can get the security that we need at our airports before the year 2049. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman. On a Saturday morning in Cicero, Illinois, a young couple got in the car with their 1-year-old child and drove to a Sam's Club to go grocery shopping. When they arrived, they saw a large law enforcement presence, some sort of an operation going on in the parking lot, and so they turned their car around to leave. As they were leaving the Sam's Club parking lot, this happened. Please show the first video.
Of what appears to be pepper spray thrown by a federal agent into Rafael Veraza's car. He says he was just pulling out of the Cicero Sam's Club parking lot with his window rolled down when the spray hit Veraza on the side of his head.
Mama, you okay, Mama? You okay?
Seconds later, he realized his daughter, 1-year-old Ariana, was in the back seat, also battling the chemicals. Veraza says she couldn't open her eyes and struggled to breathe.
I had water to water down my face and basically water down her face because I didn't know the effects of the pepper spray towards her.
Rafael says Ariana did not have to go to the hospital, but he did. He says the pepper spray hit him directly in the ear, which caused him to have a severe reaction with his asthma.
When I got to the hospital, my heartbeats were at 263 per minute.
Do you know how dangerous it is to spray pepper spray into a moving vehicle? Not only could that kill the people inside the car, it could kill other drivers and bystanders who might be hit by the vehicle. There is not a law enforcement agency in this country that teaches its officers to do that. In fact, in most law enforcement agencies, those officers would be fired. but not in Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security. We don't know who these officers were or if they were disciplined in any way. All we know is that the White House keeps telling them that they have, quote, absolute immunity. Absolute immunity, pepper spraying a young family in a moving vehicle. And whenever we call attention to these kinds of abuses, the first thing the administration does is try to blame the victims. But this is a family of United States citizens. They weren't even protesting. They were just out to get groceries. And this keeps happening again and again and again. Show the second video, please.
Was from our son's basketball game at Anderson Middle School.
As the night unfolded,
we started to see, light stuff.
One North Minneapolis family trying to make their way home.
Like, even trying to leave, I couldn't go backwards, forward. It was like I was just stuck.
Destiny and Sean Jackson, along with their 6 kids, had just left the nearby game when they turned onto Lindale.
On Sean, I'm like, get out. Like, I can't, Mom, and I can't breathe.
Destiny says bystanders pulled her into a home to check on her as she screamed that her 6-month-old child was still in the car.
He was just like lifeless, like he had like foam like around his mouth, and you can see he had tears coming out his eyes. I was getting him out to mouth, and I remember stopping and I said, I will give you all my breath till you get yours back, because nobody wants to see their kids like that.
What was the response of the Homeland Security Department leadership after this? Did they express remorse? Did they suspend the agents or launch an investigation? No. They put up a false tweet blaming that family, the victims, calling the Jackson family, quote, radical agitators. Now, unlike a lot of the victim-blaming tweets that the administration posts, they actually took that one down because it was so indefensible. But why was it put up in the first place? What does it say about the rotten culture at the Trump Department of Homeland Security that when American citizens are hurt by federal agents, the response is to immediately blame the victims before you even know the facts? Now, we can keep going and going. These are just a couple of examples. And I know that this hearing is supposed to be about TSA and cyber, which is important. But when the federal government is sending poorly trained masked agents into the streets, beating and gassing peaceful people, including American citizens, we cannot pretend that this is normal and act like it should be business as usual. We need real standards in place, just like every other law enforcement agency in the country has, to make sure that federal agents are well trained, do not use excessive force when not warranted, and are held accountable when they do things like tear gas a family inside a moving vehicle. This has to stop. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gonzalez, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, panelists. Director Gottumukkala. This, CISA isn't a small little agency that you just go to retire at. It's arguably one of the most important agencies in our government that most people don't realize what's happening. This year, I would argue one of the biggest things that's going to be in your purview is going to be this election. It's going to determine the future not only of our country, but also the future of the world in general. So midterm elections, my question to you is, what is CISA doing to ensure our midterm elections are safe, secure, and fair?
Congressman, thank you. Election security is very important for national security. And somehow the claim that DHS or CISA has rolled back election security protections is not accurate. We treat election security like any other critical infrastructure sector. And our election security services remain fully in place, including cybersecurity support that we provide, the physical security guidance provided. There is the incident response that we provide, and also the threat briefings for the state and local election officials. The election infrastructure owners and operators continue to receive the same level of support as other critical infrastructure entities. So what changed was the scope, not the security, sir. We ended activities that were outside its core mission, but not the election protections itself. And the election security is focused on the infrastructure by all means. What it means is we are exclusively focused on defending the election infrastructure from any cyber threats, any physical threats, and also any foreign adversaries that are out there. And as you may know, sir, foreign threats remain a core priority for us. The nation-state adversaries continue to pose risks to our election infrastructure. And CISA, we are providing that threat intelligence. We are conducting that the vulnerability scanning to all our state and local infrastructure owners. And we are making sure that we are coordinating that incident response across the board. Election security remains integrated into CISA's broader cyber and physical security mission, sir.
I ask that you make that a top priority because it's a top priority for many Americans. You can win an election, you can lose an election, but it has to be fair and it has to be secure, and our adversaries don't want that. My question to you is how many cyber intrusions do we expect this midterm election?
Sir, we look at it as incident by incident, and we look at what the risks are. I don't have a specific number in mind.
Well, we should have that number. It should first start by how many intrusions did we have last midterm, and the midterm before that, and midterm before that. I don't want us waiting until after the fact to be able to go, yeah, we got it wrong, and it turns out our adversaries influenced our election. To that point, what actions is CISA doing to work with other partners like Cybercom to ensure that these adversaries are not intruding in our election?
We have a very good working relationship. Our strength is collaboration. We want to make sure that we're working with our law enforcement and trusted intelligence partners across the country and international partners to make sure that we are safe.
Cybercom in particular. Is CISA working with Cybercom on any cyber offensive actions to prevent our adversaries from interfering in our elections?
Congressman, thank you. We work with Cybercom on threat intelligence sharing and making sure that we have the incident response, and we are working with the private and stakeholder communities to make sure that that threat information is shared.
Okay, we need that to be a priority. That needs to be a priority. Between Cybercom and CISA, you two are the two organizations that are going to keep this nation and our world safe to ensure that these elections are fair and secure. To that point, what state or non-state actors are the most aggressive in interfering with our elections?
Congressman, thank you. I think the threat actors continue the foreign state adversaries, especially the People's Republic of China and Russia, seems to be the most aggressive nation-state actors. The strategic adversary is China. They are long-term, and they have patient campaigns focused on pre-positioning in our critical infrastructure for a strategic advantage. As you might have seen with Volt Typhoon and Salt Typhoon, they are both PRC state-sponsored campaign focused on pre-positioning themselves inside the U.S. critical infrastructure for potential disruption for a future crisis. Unlike the traditional espionage these actors use living off the land techniques.
Director, I have 10 seconds left. What I'd say is you just said everything that everyone has ever come before this committee and said, the same actors over and over and over again. So it's no surprise that these actors are going to be involved. They were involved in the last election. They'll be involved in this election. They'll be involved in every election going forward. What I ask is, instead of the United States playing defense, it's long time we play offense and prevent these bad actors from influencing our elections. With that, Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman. And I do have a number of articles I want to enter into the record at the end. So as a Chicagoan, I know the terror that DHS can inflict with unlimited resources and unchecked power. You just saw some of that with what Congressman Magaziner just showed. Our constituents are being surveilled, they're being threatened, they're being tear gassed, and subjected to warrantless arrest. Rammed with vehicles, they're being kidnapped, and you've seen it, they're also being disappeared. Yet there are those in Congress who would still expand DHS's budget and ICE capacity to enact Trump's mass deportation agenda. And so I often get asked back in my district, how is this possible? How is it that they can behave this way? How can they tear gas a 6-month-old baby? Isn't Congress supposed to be a check on DHS? Well, first, I say to them that would require my Republican colleagues to agree that bringing senior ICE officials to testify before this committee is critical. And I do hear, Chairman, that that may happen in 6 weeks or so. I think it's far too late. They should be here right now. Secondly, that would also suggest that DHS is behaving in ways outside its design. Now, let me be clear. DHS and ICE, it's not rogue. Let me tell you why. Because from its establishment, Congress empowered DHS to violate our rights under the pretense of securing our safety. Who feels safe right now under DHS? DHS was intentionally established with an overbroad mission and unchecked power, which has been expanded by Republicans with a blank check, unlimited personnel, and no guardrails whatsoever. And Trump, with his authoritarian tendencies, is only making visible what so many communities have already known to be true. DHS is a threat to our collective safety, and funding it only fuels our destruction and our human suffering. It's why 32 people have died in detention in ICE's deadliest year yet. US citizens are being shot and killed, and the agency doesn't even know who they're hiring and doesn't seem to even care who they're hiring. Yet, Trump's campaign donors are profiting off the pain of our neighbors, including children. And so today I say enough. I am introducing today the Melt ICE Act that would prohibit DHS from using funds to detain or monitor immigrants, effectively limiting ICE's authority and ability to continue to cause pain and terror, while redirecting the funding that they have, taxpayer dollars that they're using to kill US citizens, back into the communities impacted by ICE's terror through wraparound services. Because we know that DHS is being used as a weapon to be pointed towards anyone the government considers a public enemy. And fascism always requires a public enemy. So we must take the weapon away and hold those who have allowed our communities to be terrorized accountable. So let me get to the witnesses here. My understanding is that your agencies are working with ICE in some capacity under the Trump administration. Ms. McNeill, is your agency sharing data with ICE, yes or no?
Absolutely, we are part of
Got
the
it, that's
Department of
it.
Homeland
Yes or no,
Security,
that's
and
it, thank you.
what we do.
Ms. McNeill, I have a follow-up question for you. Why is TSA making life miserable for people that have every right to travel domestically and who pose no threat to aviation instead of focusing on your security mission?
I don't agree with your statement, ma'am. As we have seen, the men and women of TSA are absolutely dedicated to the transportation and national security mission, and that was very apparent during the 43-day shutdown where they continued to show up to work while we waited for funding to come.
Thank you, Ms. McNeill. It is clear that people are living in fear, and TSA is working with ICE to terrorize our communities. Dr. Gottumukkala, has your agency taken personnel off mission to work for ICE? Let me add to that. That includes details and reassignments from your agency to ICE or CBP, as well as to the Federal Protective Service and U.S. Marshals in communities with ICE enforcement operations. That's a yes or no question.
Congressman, not in my times.
So in the last year, your agency has not taken personnel off mission to work for ICE, yes or no?
Not in my time, ma'am.
Okay. I'll have something into the record that indicates the opposite. So let me ask you another question. Does it concern you that your personnel might already have staffing shortages? As we just heard a moment ago, over a third in staff shortages, yet the administration is asking for your staff to be used for ICE enforcement?
Congressman, I think
Does it concern you, yes or no?
We are on mission. We are doing all the cyber from physical.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. Has your agency transferred funding to ICE, yes or no? Has any of your funding gone to ICE, yes or no?
Congresswoman,
Yes, the answer is yes. My time is up.
Gentlelady's time has expired. I now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Strong, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson. As my colleagues have noted, the United States is entering a period marked by high-profile special events and increased global travel, underscoring the importance of readiness across the Homeland Security enterprise. Thank you to our witnesses and their teams for their work to meet these challenges. Mr. Allday, within the Science and Technology Directorate, R&D portfolio, Where does the threat posed by unmanned aerial systems and counter UAS capabilities rank as a priority?
Thank you, Congressman. Apologies. Thank you, Congressman, for your question. I think it's very high on our priority list. That's exhibited by Secretary Nomes creating a program executive office within S&T that brings together both the policy and the R&D aspects, acquisition support aspects to handle the counter UAS mission, particularly in a speedy manner as we approach the FIFA World Cup, LA 2028 Olympics, and America 250.
Given the rapid evolution of drone technology, how is S&T keeping its counter UAS research ahead of its threats?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. At present, our focus is getting to speedy delivery of systems into the field in preparation for these events. So we're providing technical review and assistance to our partners to ensure that the right systems that work well get out into the field to prevent the threats. We are also doing a number of testing, development, and evaluation efforts to look at new technologies that may help change the game for us. But at present, given the short timeframes, the thrust of our effort is getting delivery out into the fields.
Okay. My district is home to the joint S&T, FBI, and TSA TIDE Center, as well as the FBI's Terrorist Explosive Device Analytical Center. These centers work closely together to protect our homeland and stay ahead of potential threats. How does the FBI's expertise inform S&T's efforts at TIDES, and how does the collaboration enhance TSA's implementation of effective screening technologies?
Thank you for that question. We, as an agency focused on delivering transportation security, the traveling public are always focused on looking at cutting-edge technologies and how to advance those in collaboration with our partners at S&T and across the U.S. government. The evolving threat requires us to always evolve our posture, and that includes technology. So, we look forward to our continued partnership across DHS to ensure that we're meeting that mission, but also to work with this committee in Congress to ensure that we've got the funding to be able to deploy that technology into the hands of our operators.
Thank you. Dr. Gottum, how do you say it? I'm going to ask again.
You're good, sir. You can call me with my first name.
Dr. G, there we go. CISA was created by Congress with bipartisan support to protect national security. Unfortunately, the Biden administration transformed an agency once focused on cyber and foreign threats to critical infrastructure into an unaccountable censorship agency that pressured social media companies to take down speech protected by the First Amendment. Can you confirm that CISA has stopped those policies or policing American speech and returned to its authorized mission scope?
Congressman, thank you for the question. I mentioned earlier, what changed was the scope, not security. CISA ended all the activities that were outside its core mission, not election protections. The activities that ended involved monitoring any Americans' lawful speech, any narrative management, or any coordination with those social media companies on election-related posts. Those activities are not operational election security services. So we ended abuses, sir, not any protections that we do with election security.
You said earlier, and I quote, CISA is trying to get back on mission, close quote. For the record, during the Biden administration, what got CISA so off its core mission?
Congressman, thank you for the question. As part of this administration and under the guidance of Secretary Noem, we are reviewing line by line on all the items that we do, and we are eliminating any redundancy. We have eliminated duplicative oversight roles, and we have consolidated fragmented IT support structures. We unified a lot of fragmented IT functions under one office. We eliminated overlapping IT operations. We removed over 300 plus duplicative contractor roles. We modernized some of the enterprise IT environment.
Thank you. My time's expired. I thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Kennedy, for 5 minutes of questions. Sorry about those bills, buddy.
Yeah, we are in pain with Bill's Mafia. Thank you. We're here to talk about some very important issues here, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for bringing this committee together today, but I am terribly disappointed both by the answers that I'm hearing or the lack thereof answers, as well as the lack of ICE being here with us to answer some very serious questions. They should be here testifying under oath, answering pressing questions that all of us have. This committee needs answers from ICE. The people of this country need answers of what is happening across this nation. Like what happens to families like Renee Nicole Goods who are left with a massive hole in their hearts because of this administration's lawlessness? And what credibility can investigation into this tragedy possibly have if it ends as quickly as it begins and scrutinizes everyone in Minneapolis except for the agent who shot her? And how many U.S. citizens and lawful residents have been swept up in the Trump administration's immigration raids? How many of them have seen their due process rights, those enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, willfully ignored? Why is Secretary Noem taking no responsibility for the violence she has brought to our communities? And how much farther is she willing to go to destroy the American dream as we know it? What critical DHS missions are being neglected at the expense of Secretary Noem's extreme immigration agenda? And that last question, I'd like to ask the witnesses in detail about reassignments away from your respective agencies in immigration enforcement missions. We know that Secretary Noem's taken thousands of federal personnel from their assigned duties, and it's felt acutely in my community in Western New York. My district has 4 bridges that connect New York and Canada, and yet many of these travel processing booths are empty because Secretary Noem is diverting resources from northern border communities. This drives up costs, takes away good-paying jobs, deters travel with our closest ally to the north, and makes things less safe. So I understand both CISA and TSA have had employees reassigned to oversee the Trump administration's immigration and deportation operations, along with its draconian crackdown on Americans exercising First Amendment rights. So Acting Director Gottumukkala and Deputy Administrator McNeill, how many people from CISA and TSA have been reassigned?
Congressman, not to the knowledge of, I don't have the knowledge of any people from CISA.
But your agency's been cut by over a third.
The team participated in a voluntary, the workforce transition program, and we are working towards our own mission of making sure that we are protecting the critical infrastructure from cyber and physical threats.
Ms. McNeill, how many of your employees have been reassigned?
I'm not aware of any of our employees being moved over to ICE.
And 250 air marshals you testified today have been reassigned. Is that accurate?
That is not a
Two different-
reassignment. The federal air marshals are providing in-flight security for deportation flights, which is actually falls within their mission space.
So
That is what they do,
outside
is
of
provide
commercial
in-flight
flights,
security.
they have been reassigned to other flights. 250 air marshals have been reassigned. How can we assure the American people that flying in this country is safe post 9/11 if the air marshals that have been provided to do the work to keep them safe in the skies have been reassigned off of those commercial flights?
Providing in-flight security for deportation flight keeps our skies safe, and I don't think that your number is accurate, Congressman, but we're happy to make sure that we get
I believe
you that
that's
number.
the number that was mentioned in this testimony today. Do you believe that TSA employees have the right to organize, Ms. McNeill?
As I stated earlier, the administrator has the authority to set the terms and framework of employment of the TSA workforce, and we need to do so in a way that keeps in mind the mission of TSA, which was granted by Congress.
Is that a
to
yes or a
ensure
no?
that we
Do you
have an
believe
agile
that the
workforce to
employees
deliver
that
for
keep
the
our
American
skies, our communities safe have a right to organize in this country?
I think that
Yes
is
or no?
determined by the administrator, and actually what we are focused on is delivering aviation and transportation security for the American people and being a good steward of the taxpayer dollars.
I will take that as either a non-answer or, quite frankly, it sounds like a no to me, which is very, very disappointing, disheartening, not just to this panel and to this committee, but to the rank and file working families that are out there protecting us each and every day. It is their right in this country to organize if they choose to do so. And quite frankly, it is an obligation of this government to work with them in a collective bargaining scenario to provide them the rights that they deserve. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by pushing back against my colleagues on the other side. You know, it's interesting to me, I've only been in Congress for 3 years now, but they clearly created this catastrophe. We warned about it in the last Congress, why the southern border was wide open and many of our visa programs were being completely exploited. Now you have 15 million people in the country. That's a figure they won't even argue with. And now the American people elected President Trump and this administration to go and solve the problem. And now, so they've turned on ICE, whose job is to get the criminals and these people out of the country. And so they've turned on ICE. We even have a member on this panel, again, who assaulted an ICE agent. And we wonder why this stuff continues to happen. And I didn't hear any of them talking about the deportations that took place under President Obama, who I believe was deporting even more people than President Trump has in his first year. Next, I want to turn to what this committee is actually about. And I want to start with CISA. Dr. Gottumukkala, under the Biden administration, censorship, deplatforming, and flagging speech of Americans they didn't like was very common and often reported. They censored American citizens who were posting about election integrity. They were also deplatforming anybody who talked about COVID-19 and its origins. Correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, but I thought CISA was for protecting American infrastructure and cybersecurity. Is that correct? Why do you think CISA started, going after Americans for exercising free speech?
Congressman, thank you for the question. You're absolutely right. Election security is focused on infrastructure. And CISA's election security role is focused exclusively on defending the election infrastructure from cyber threats and physical threats and foreign adversaries. And that includes any voter registration systems, election technology, and supporting systems, not speech or content moderation. And precisely why I keep saying is that what changed was the scope, not the security. We ended activities that were outside its core mission and not election protections. Those activities that ended involved monitoring any American's lawful speech and narrative management. And you rightly said, sir, coordination with social media companies on election-related posts. Those activities are not operational election security issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I got to cut you off. I got more questions. I want to turn to Ms. McNeill with TSA. On July 8th, TSA ended its shoes off policy, which was obviously in place because we had, incidents like the shoe bomber that tried to bring a bomb in his shoe on board an airplane. Why was that policy ended, Ms. McNeill?
Thank you for the question, Congressman Crane. At TSA, we're continually looking at the risk environment that we operate within and improving our standard operating procedures and operations at the checkpoint to reflect that risk picture. There had been multiple risk assessments done in past years that allowed us to make that change and amend our procedures to maintain the safety of the skies while delivering for the American public. Continual improvement is something that TSA embraces. And
Ms. McNeill, real quick, do you think with technology adapting, it's impossible for somebody to make a bomb out of their shoes?
The way that we approach security is to deploy multiple different layers of security and pieces of technology to ensure that nobody can essentially game the system. We have multiple layers from identity and vetting through all of these physical screening that happens at the checkpoint, and then in-flight security as well. So through that layered security approach is how we deliver for the American public, and that's something that has been in place since the inception of TSA.
Thank you. I want to turn to some of the Somali cash going through airports. It's estimated that $700 million in cash in passenger luggage was leaving the Minnesota airport in the last 2 years. Has TSA made any changes to its policies to prevent this activity that is tied to the fraud in Minnesota from continuing on?
We are extremely proud of the team at TSA for highlighting this issue by reporting what they saw in the normal course of their screening in Minnesota.
But reporting's not enough, right? It continued to go on, and we got $700 million in cash. Has anything been changed? That's the question I asked you.
We are
Stop this from
working.
happening.
We are working with our interagency partners and law enforcement partners to ensure that this issue is being addressed. We continue being a good partner to them. The money that was moved through legal means, and so this is where I think Congress has a role to play to think about the authorities around this bulk cash movement.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. McIver, for 5 minutes of questions.
Mr. Crane, I don't know what your obsession is.
I thought you were supposed to address the chair.
I'm so tired of you mentioning me. And
Mr. Chairman, is she supposed to
obsession
address
and
me
to
or
put it
the
to
chair?
the people of Arizona, not me.
Yeah, well,
Keep my
if you
name
quit
out your
assaulting
mouth.
ICE agents,
I am
wouldn't keep
reclaiming
bringing
my
you up.
time. I am reclaiming my
Committee will
time.
come to order.
Watch your mouth when
Follow
you're
the
talking
rules
about
of the
me.
committee,
Come to
Ms.
order.
McIver.
Excuse me, I'm reclaiming my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. Let me get to the business that I'm here for the people of New Jersey, not Mr. Crane. Thank you for holding today's hearing. Here we are 3 weeks into the new year, and finally we're having our first full committee hearing in more than a month. During that time, the lawlessness of DHS under Donald Trump and Kristi Noem has increased tenfold. Just last week, a parent in my home state of New Jersey was detained by ICE after ordering food for his 6-year-old daughter. When her dad didn't come home, the little girl was then found crying and wandering around for hours outside, parentless. How inhumane. Like I told Secretary Noem when she sat in this room last month, the greatest threat to the homeland right now is the Department of Homeland Security under her control. Unfortunately, the Republicans, like Mr. Crane, in control of Congress, are not up to the task. In the face of the administration's appalling escalation of violence, the majority has set up this hearing with a random assortment of DHS leaders who are not the ones we really need to hear from in this moment. I join my colleagues in demanding that we bring ICE's acting director, Todd Owens, before the committee as soon as possible. Respectfully, Mr. Chairman. That would be just the start of providing the accountability and change our constituents are demanding of us right now in this moment. Now, since having administration witnesses is a rarity this Congress, I do want to talk a bit about TSA. Acting Administrator McNeill, I want to note that I am the top Democrat on the Transportation and Maritime Security Subcommittee, but this is the first time we have met. In fact, this is the first time we have had a single TSA witness before the full committee or any subcommittee this Congress, even as the majority is embarking on an effort to reauthorize the agency. Ms. McNeill, as with other DHS components, this administration has been lawless in its direction for TSA. Last month, Secretary Noem tried to abolish the workforce's collective bargaining rights in a blatant defiance of a court order to keep them in place. My fellow Democrats and I wrote to the Secretary and to you to demand that you halt those efforts, and I am glad that a court has since ruled that those efforts are in fact illegal. However, we still did not hear from you. Ms. McNeill, I recognize you have no control over Kristi Noem's lawlessness and cannot speak to whether she will continue to break the law. But speaking for yourself in this moment, yes or no, will you commit to abiding by the court order to keep TSA's collective bargaining agreement in place and fully honor its provisions?
Every step that the Secretary and that we have taken has been in compliance with the courts.
Is that yes or no? I'm speaking on behalf of you, not Secretary Noem. Will you commit to that? Will you commit to the provision?
Continue to be in compliance.
Will you commit to the provision as the acting administrator? Yes or no?
We are both.
Okay,
both the
I'll
Secretary
go.
and myself
I'll
are
go to my
committed
next questions, Ms. McNeill, because you're gonna do this today. I don't have much time. Okay, Ms. McNeill, what has TSA done prior to providing passenger data to ICE to ensure compliance with the law?
We are acting within our absolute authorities. We are part of the Department of Homeland Security. It was a department that was set up by Congress to ensure that these agencies weren't operating in silos, and that's what we are doing today, to advance the mission, the national security mission of the department.
Ms. McNeill, TSA mission is to secure transportation, not to assist ICE with immigration enforcement. There is no law that forbids undocumented people from flying domestically within the U.S. The vast majority of undocumented people have no criminal record and pose absolutely no threat to aviation. Under what authority is TSA sharing passenger data with ICE?
We are absolutely within our authorities to share information within the Department of Homeland Security to further the national security mission.
What statute are you following or policy? Point to the policy or the statute that you are following. Under what authority is TSA sharing passenger data with ICE that you are allowed to do that?
We are allowed to do that.
What policy or statute are you following?
I can get you the exact policy.
Oh, please do. We will wait on that. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gladly.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Ogles, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the witnesses. There's been a lot of talk about ICE, and unfortunately, really outside the scope of this hearing. And for that, to our witnesses, I apologize, because science and technology, TSA, the chairman of cyber, I'm going to spend a lot of my time with the good doctor here, but S&T, if you would, please, if there's anything that we can do as members of this committee in Congress to help you affect your job more efficiently, please, if you'll reach out to my office, I'd love to have an offline conversation with you, TSA. Same with you as well. And, and I commend you and your office and your agents for the job you're doing during the shutdown. And it should be noted, Mr. Chairman, that Joe Biden reassigned air marshals to assist with the movement of illegals across the southern border. So when we talk about reassignment of roles, let's look at the large scope of how it's been done under previous administrations. So, and then, again, collective bargaining, you want to talk about manufacturing. When you look at Six Sigma and Lean Six and efficiencies within operations, the fact that we're bringing that to the government is a good thing as we move forward. And so we specifically, to Dr. Gottumukkala, we have the privilege of talking. When you look at reductions within your agency, one of the things we said, or I said in the previous hearing, the cyber subcommittee, was that it's about quality, not necessarily quantity. Can you speak to the numbers and, quite frankly, the trend lines? Your department is, when you look at attrition, slightly below the federal average. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Congressman.
Gentleman yield.
I do not. Thank you.
Congressman, thank you for the question. And first of all, I want to say that there is continued bipartisan support across for CISA. And the personnel that we have, we are making sure that they are on mission. For somehow the bad press or whatever we see, we miss the point that CISA personnel are deployed across the 10 regions in support of all 56 states and territories, working with the local.
Specifically, good doctor, because we have limited time. So roughly 800 agents. What percentage of the workforce is that? 23 some odd percent?
That is correct, sir. About 23% participated in the workforce transition program.
And then the national average of, aside from that, roughly 9% across federal agencies, you're trending, what, 7% attrition?
That is correct, sir. Compared to the previous years, it's about 9.25 approximately across all federal agencies, and we were at 6.5 to 7.5% from a natural attrition this year.
So the facts, quite frankly, speak for themselves. And as chairman of cyber, I spent a lot of time in the SCIF getting updates on the constant attacks that we face from threat actors like China, like North Korea, like Iran, like Russia. And yet you're doing more with less, and you're doing it more efficiently. And so for that, I say thank you. One of the things that we talked about and what's important, I think, to the American people, when again, I said it in the hearing, is the war has already begun. We know who the adversary is. Our primary adversary is China. It's important that we on this committee and you and your agency have better communications, increase communications, and then we're updated on a much more timely basis. So with that, and again, per our conversation, do you agree that members of this committee, and in particular the subcommittee on cybersecurity and infrastructure, which has direct oversight of CISA, will be informed in a timely manner and, quite frankly, when needed, in a skiff so that we can do our jobs and help you and assist you in doing yours, sir.
Congressman, I appreciate the support. Yes, definitely.
And then, you know, to change subjects, and I appreciate you, your willingness to meet with me. I appreciate all of you for being here. When we look at the mission statement and the directive we have here with the committee, it's important that we keep things in perspective. We have an obligation to the American people and to the American taxpayer. And one of the things that we've seen under the previous administrations plural, is the absolute suck on our system, our infrastructure, and our welfare. So, for example, Bhutan, 81.4% are on welfare. Yemen, 75.2%. Somalia, 71.9%. Marshall Islands, 71.4%. Afghani, 68.1%. Dominican Republic, 68.1%. Bangladesh, 54.8%. Pakistan, 40.2%. And I can go on. But this idea that doctors and lawyers were brought into this country to help our society is absolute nonsense. Go back to Hart-Celler. Back to the 1960s, let's abolish it, and quite frankly, deport them all. This is the United States of America. We get to decide who comes in, and Mr. Chairman, we get to decide who leaves. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. Poe, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as we sit here, DHS is operating an armed invasion of an American state, Minnesota. Local law enforcement described DHS tactics as, quote, profoundly detrimental to public safety. An American citizen was shot in the face and killed by an ICE agent. Secretary Noem and ICE Director Todd Lyons should be here testifying under oath what happened to Renee Good and the pervasive ICE violence against Americans, because we know Noem's taxpayers-funded media tour continues to spew outright lies about her department, including calling Renee Good a domestic terrorist. Just this weekend, the secretary went on TV and said that 70% of the people held by ICE have committed violent crimes. In fact, only 25% of individuals in ICE custody have criminal convictions, with many being minor offenses like traffic violations. And that's a fact. No one here can speak to the rampant DHS corruption, like the $200 million in taxpayers' money used for an ad campaign to the secretary's aide and family, or her so-called border czar who accepted a fast food checkout bag stuffed with $50,000 cash bribe. Why is DHS illegally blocking Congress from entering ICE facilities? Is it to cover up the 32 people who died in ICE custody last year, or the 4 this year, including a reported homicide at a Texas ICE facility earlier this month? There are now reports that in my home state of New Jersey, ICE is looking to convert massive warehouses into detention centers, including one in Roxbury. None of these witnesses can speak to any of these abuses, but there are important questions that we can cover, starting with election security. I am alarmed by the administration's termination of funding for state and local elections offices for election security. We talked earlier, and someone asked about how safe are our elections. Are they fair? Will they be indeed secured? This president has attempted to weaponize CISA and spread disinformation about his election loss in 2020. So I'd like to ask Dr. Gottumukkala, did Donald Trump win or lose the 2020 election? Yes or no?
Congresswoman, I will be more than happy to talk
Yes
about this
or no?
mission. I'm not here to discuss about
I know.
the
Yes or no?
2000 election or the 2020 election.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? Yes or no?
Ma'am, I'll be more than happy to discuss about
It's
the great
simple.
work that CISA does and
You know
how we are
what?
back on mission.
I can
and how we
understand
are
why
eliminating
you would
redundancy.
want to, I will tell you, this is a simple question that only has one right answer. Yes, he was in fact defeated. Do you believe that Donald Trump defeats? Do you believe that Trump's defeat in 2020 contributed to this administration's cutting funds to support election security for state and local officials? Yes or no?
Ma'am, election security is focused on infrastructure, and as CISA, we are exclusively focused on defending the election
So,
infrastructure.
quite honestly, it's very simple. What kind of justification could explain this reckless cuts? Please explain that.
Ma'am, once again, I have explained before, the
It's
people
clear
that, have
that you're not going to
participated
be
in the
able
workforce
to
transition
do
program,
that.
they have
I'm
done so
sorry, but it's
voluntarily.
obviously clear that you're not looking to answer a simple question with a yes or no answer. I am very concerned, Mr. Chairman, over the fact that one of my colleagues asked earlier about sharing information. And Ms. McNeill, the passengers, are we in fact making TSA, American citizens aware that TSA is in fact diverting resources, and how are those personnel information being shared between agencies? Do the American people know that their information may very well be shared?
The gentlelady can maybe respond in writing to that question, and the time has expired.
That's fine.
Oh, I
Thank
appreciate
you,
that.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back. I would like, however, to be able to ask that question.
Absolutely. I know all committee members will have the time to submit questions in writing
Thank you,
following this.
sir.
I know I have a bunch that I'm going to be
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The
I
gentlelady
yield
yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Biggs, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our panelists for being here today. I would like to elaborate on my colleague, Congressman Crane, what he was stating. It is concerning to me that for 2 years, Somali residents were walking through the Minneapolis airport with duffel bags filled with cash, nearly $1 million a day, totaling nearly $1 billion. I think that's astonishing. TSA reportedly flagged this flood of money and raised it to DHS and intel agencies. So, Administrator McNeill, did that really happen? And who were these individuals responsible for this? And where was the cash going? Because to me, if that is what was reported, why wasn't it stopped immediately? This money could have easily been used for terrorists and tied to the same massive Somali fraud networks that we keep seeing across Minnesota.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for that question. TSA did indeed report these incidents as it came across the checkpoint, because bulk cash shows up as a mass on the X-ray, and so our officers have to resolve what they can't identify on the X-ray machine. And through the course of their normal day-to-day duties, they reported that to our law enforcement partners in compliance with their standard operating procedures. This is why it's really important to take a whole of government approach on this and levy the authorities of all these law enforcement agencies, both across DHS and with the Department of Treasury, to ensure that we are taking a concerted whole of government approach to this. And I think this is where the role of Congress is also critical, to ensure that we have the right framework in place to take action. As I mentioned earlier, the movement of this money historically had been done through legal channels. And so, I think we're going to have to collectively work on this.
Okay, I still didn't hear what is actually being done about it.
We continue to report it based on our standard operating procedures. I know there's an ongoing investigation with our law enforcement partners. We are part of that, and we're happy to brief you and the members of this committee on any developments that we see on that front.
Okay, I guess my next question would be, why is Congress finding out about this from journalists and not from DHS?
I can't speak to that. I mean, again, I think we, are committed to transparency with this committee, and as the investigation evolves, we are happy to brief out on our part in this, and work with the rest of the U.S. government to make sure that we're taking action.
Well, thank you for that. My constituents and the American people would love to hear a follow-up on that. Thank you. So my next question, TSA, the touchless pre-check is a biometric identity verification capability that enables enrolled pre-check travelers to verify their identity at airport checkpoints using facial recognition and eliminating the need to present a physical ID. What is TSA's long-term vision for this TIS, and is it intended solely as a checkpoint identity verification tool, or does TSA envision it becoming a broader identity platform across the transportation system?
So we have launched the touchless identification system, as you mentioned, TIS, in 15 locations today for pre-check. It is a voluntary facilitative technology that we offer to our pre-check members. We're going to be rolling out additional locations, based on the experience and feedback that we're getting from our pre-check population. It is very well received. And again, I would just state it's voluntary, and it's meant to really provide that seamless experience to our trusted population as they travel through our airports, because you don't have to take out your identity or your boarding pass at the checkpoint. So it is a facilitative tool. That is the intent of that program, is to offer that benefit to our pre-check population.
Just one more quick thing. So is it beyond passenger screening? Will it be like for cargo or international operations? Will it go more in depth?
It is intended for passenger screening and for our pre-check population.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the ranking member as well. Thank the witnesses for appearing today. Mr. McNeill, the Transportation Security Officers Union is under attack. And thankfully, a court injunction has kept TSA's union in place. Most recently, the Secretary openly defied the court order and tried to disband TSA's union for a second time. Last week, the court said those actions plainly defy its injunction and ordered the Secretary to keep TSA's collective bargaining agreement in place or risk contempt. My question to you, Acting Administrator, is this. Will you commit to abiding by the court's order to keep the TSA's collective bargaining agreement in place?
Congressman, every step that we've taken to date, and we will continue to do
if
so,
I may,
abides by court
since I
orders.
control the time, if I may, please. This question can be answered with a yes or a no, and if it's anything less than a yes or a no, I will assume you mean no. So now, back to you again. Will you commit to honoring a court's order? A court's order. A court's order. When you don't honor court's orders and you're the Secretary, you can be impeached. So now, will you commit to honoring the court's order?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm pleased that you said yes, because the Secretary needs to confer with you. She needs your advice. The Secretary, quite frankly, is probably being influenced by the President. Disobeying court orders is something that is antithetical to the Constitution. The courts are there for a reason. And if we can disobey court orders, we no longer have a Constitution that we can count on. You're defacing, demeaning, and denigrating the Constitution when this happens. Not you personally. You've already said yes, and I'm grateful to you for saying yes. But that's what's happening. And I can assure you, people are growing tired of seeing what's happening in terms of the lawlessness emanating from this department. They're growing tired of it. What happened to Ms. Good is something that people are not going to forget. And for the secretary and others to contend that she was a domestic terrorist is beyond comprehension without even having investigated immediately. This was a Christian woman with children who, according to her wife, they had whistles, and they indicated that the constabulary had pistols, as evidenced by the fact that she's no longer with us. People are getting fed up with this behavior and the justifications for lawlessness. We must return to the rule of law. And one of the ways to return to the rule of law is to enforce the law. And one of the laws that we can use to make sure the rule of law prevails is impeachment. This secretary is putting herself in harm's way as it relates to impeachment, not a physicality, but in terms of how she is conducting herself in office. And my guess is, if she is not very careful, she may become the first secretary to be removed from office. We have a long runway here. It doesn't end at the end of this year. There's a long runway. So I'm going to beg you to counsel with her and help her to better understand that the law prevails and she is not the law and neither is the president. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Oklahoma, Ms. McKean, for 5 minutes questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To our witnesses, thank you. As typical in Washington, some of us having to shift in and shift out because of scheduling conflicts. I am certain, because I heard some of the commentaries I walked in, some of what we're going to be discussing on my part is a little bit redundant. Please forgive me because I did miss some of the prior discussion. Relative to CISA and the weaponization that many felt like through the social component, social media, I just want to make this as just a statement. This is kind of a rhetorical statement. That is something of major concern to us, that under this administration, we continue to pay attention to that and make sure that our government is not allowing that to continue that we saw in years past. That said, and moving on, for TSA and for the oversight we're conducting with the World Cup, with the Olympics, I know, Director McNeill, that you are very much attuned to what's ahead, the high volume, the international traffic. Look, the heightened threat level, the landscape that we had in this hearing months ago because of the illegal population that was let in by the prior administration, there is a different threat landscape. And whether it be the biometric security screening, real ID enforcement, the gaps in that, it's been astounding to me to find out the number of states that are allowing real ID compliant driver's license. I've had some state elected officials show me how that is in the past played out, to where by the way the prior administration was implementing parole and the work permitting process, that real ID compliant driver's licenses were being handed to those who were here illegally. And so to be able to, and by your response, I'm taking it for granted that you may have not heard this before, but that's something I would very much like some feedback for our office to obtain where we're at on ensuring that with real ID coming into compliance this year and all the objections, and I was one of them on the state level, that if we have that type of possibility of illegal aliens getting a real ID compliant driver's license, what a major security concern that is. All right, I want to shift over. I know you've talked about the Somalian incident, the cash. You've talked about, in terms of what you all are doing. My question on that is, when were you all as an agency made aware that this was happening? What was the timeline of the millions of dollars that flown through the airport security system? What timing did you all become aware of this?
I believe that the reporting started back in 2017.
2017, okay. Okay. With the World Cup, with the Olympics, I'm about to say something that I'm going to make sure my words are precise and give you a chance to kind of think this thing through, because there's an element to this just for national security purposes. The DHS Inspector General released a report on November 1st, 2025 on its independent covert testing of TSA checkpoint screening to see how effective it is at preventing threat items from being brought onto commercial aircraft. We cannot publicly talk about the contents of that report due to the sensitivity of the information. But let me ask you generally, are you aware of the report? Have you read it? When did you receive it?
Yes. Yes to both of your first
Okay.
questions and last November.
Okay. And do you agree with the findings and recommendations of that report?
And I do, and it's not anything that actually we didn't know already and fully consider in our security policies.
Would you commit to providing this committee with results of any follow-up analysis conducted by TSA related to this report?
We would be glad to have a briefing on this topic in the proper classified environment.
Thank you. Transition to another little different direction here. Many travelers are confused by TSA's facial screening practices. Can you please clarify whether this is mandatory or optional?
It is absolutely voluntary. We have signage at our checkpoints that notify the passengers of that, and if they don't opt in, there are alternate procedures that they go through. So it is 100% voluntary.
And with the 25 seconds that I have left, what would you say to travelers who are concerned about their biometric data being retained as a result of that process?
I would say that we don't retain the data that is captured at the checkpoint. It's solely for the purpose of identification at that point in time as they traverse through the checkpoint.
Thank you very much. Thank you, panel. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is good that we're having a full committee hearing here. I appreciate you calling this hearing. Of course, it relates to nothing that we have an urgent need to do oversight on. We do not have Acting Director Lyons here when what we're seeing around the country is a mass secret agency dragnet using violence against American citizens and others. And it's bewildering to me because I know the chairman is a very good person. We work together on legislation. In fact, I'm optimistic we will pass the Zadroga Act together to make sure that 9/11 survivors have certainty and security in their health care. But I know that you and your colleagues cannot possibly be okay watching secret masked ICE agents barging into homes without a warrant, pulling American citizens out in their underwear, stopping American citizens on the streets and demanding their citizenship. And that, of course, is not even to mention the violence in Renee Good's murder, as well as everything else we're seeing. There is a urgent need to conduct oversight from this committee of the Department of Homeland Security. But it is not the Science and Technology Directorate. It is not the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It is not the TSA, all of which are very important agencies and certainly do very important work. I am not disparaging the work you all do. But the urgency in this country right now is what's going on with ICE. Why are we having a hearing with Department of Homeland Security officials who know nothing about ICE? We get such misinformation from this Department of Homeland Security. We're told, oh, it's the worst, it's the murderers, it's the rapists. In our home state, Mr. Chairman, of the 3,212 people ICE arrested in New York City in 2025 up through October 15th, 70% had no pending criminal charges and no criminal convictions. 15% had pending criminal charges, which of course with due process would have to play out before they are removed. 15% were convicted criminals and 5% had serious felonies. That is not the worst of the worst. That is what we should be doing oversight of. But since we do have the TSA here, Ms. McNeill, I want to ask you about this new policy that my understanding is you have implemented, where the TSA rather, is providing information to ICE to assist them with the deportation effort. You're familiar with what I'm referring to?
I am.
And just to be clear, this was a new policy implemented under this administration, correct?
It is not new policy to share information between the agencies of the Department of Homeland Security. Past administrations have shared information.
No, that's not what I asked. Is it a new policy that the TSA sends identification information of all passengers to ICE so that they can check for potential deportation orders?
That is not what is occurring. We don't send the information to ICE. We help ICE check against information. And yes, absolutely, we do that. And we are supporting the mission of our colleagues at the Department of Homeland Security. And that includes enforcement of immigration laws. And
can I just because I have a little time, can I ask you, in last year, Secretary Noem said that the Biden administration allowed immigrants who are in our country illegally to jet around the country without identification. Is that true? They had no identification, but yet they were able to get on an airplane?
I can't speak to what occurred before this administration took place, but as you know, we started enforcing Real ID last year, which is a law that was passed by Congress over 20 years ago. And
but just because I'm running out of time, is it your view that the Biden administration said it's okay for people to go on airplanes without identification? I've never been on an airplane without identification, but was it okay in the Biden administration?
Apparently, it was allowed.
Apparently, because Secretary Noem said it? You ought to be careful what you testify to, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. McKenzie, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the testifiers for being here today. Obviously, each of you cover very important agencies, and having you here is critical to the work we do as a Homeland Security Committee. I'm going to focus my questions to Ms. McNeill. The TSA is an important agency that keeps all Americans safe. And first, I'd like to commend our local TSA agents at the AB Lehigh Valley International Airport. They just went through the highest record and busiest year in history at the Lehigh Valley International Airport. Over 1 million passengers moved through successfully and safely, and we thank all of them for their work, especially during a Democrat-led shutdown where they were not being paid for a period of time. We thank them for their service and their work. Two things that I would like to highlight. First is ways that you were actually reforming the administration to move passengers through more quickly and improve the passenger experience. One of those is the Families on the Fly initiative. And can you speak to that and how that program works, what you're doing to help families, typically with children under the age of 12, to not only move them through more expeditiously, but also speed up lines for everybody else?
Thank you, Congressman McKenzie, for that question. Families on the Fly is an initiative that we rolled out last year in support of American families traveling through our airports. It dedicates a lane, a specific lane for families that go through the checkpoint. As many of us know, when you travel with children, there's a lot of gear and equipment that gets brought through. And so it provides a wider lane, easier access for families to go through, and extra assistance to screen all of their gear that they bring through. And it has the added benefit, actually, to driving down wait times in non-family lanes as well. And so, it's been a win-win for everyone, and we're really happy to be able to support families traveling through our airports.
Well, thank you for that. It's an important improvement to make in the agency. Obviously, A lot of people outside of AB have difficult experiences with TSA, and while it should be predominantly and primarily focused on safety and security, it is also a customer service-facing organization, and we want to improve that experience. So I think there are lots of great ways that we can coordinate to make sure that passengers have the best experience possible. The second thing I would like to focus on relates to the last administration, so I understand you may not be in a position to share all the information that I'm looking for here. If you don't have the information, I would ask that you do follow up with committee with written documentation of the information that we do have. And what it relates to is during the last administration, there was something that was commonly referred to as ghost flights, where illegal immigrants in this country were being moved on planes across the country to different locations. Many times it was minors. The last administration then proceeded to lose thousands of minors that were supposed to be in their custody. And when we went to our local airports and other airports in the region and asked for documentation of who was on those flights, they could not provide any manifests or logs of those flyers on the plane. We couldn't get any information on these individuals, whether they were here legally or in some kind of protected status. We couldn't get any information on who paid for those flights. Many of those people were in the country illegally, though we know, based on some of the information that was shared publicly from the last administration, where they just said that it was people that were minors here in the country illegally and being moved to a different location. So those individuals do not have proper documentation. So the last questioner asked if people were being moved on flights without proper identification. The answer is undoubtedly yes. We know that for a fact. And so my question to you is, what has this Department of DHS done under this administration to look into those transgressions that occurred in the last administration, those ghost flights? What can we now share with the public about what was going on, who was paying for them, who was on those flights? And again, if you don't have that information, I would ask that you look into it and get back to us with as much detailed information as possible, even if it has to be anonymized so that no individual information is disclosed. But that program and that activity is highly egregious and very concerning for the American people.
What I can say is that under no circumstances would that happen under this administration and the initiatives that we've rolled out at our airports, namely under the leadership of the Secretary. We've rolled out Real ID, a law that was passed 20 years ago that really does enforce identity verification standards at our checkpoints. I mentioned early on in my statement, identity verification is a cornerstone of our aviation security system. Knowing who is accessing our aircrafts is critical to our security posture. And I'm happy to get back to you on the details of the scenario that you raised earlier.
Please do look into those ghost flights. It's something that, again, should not have been occurring, should not occur going forward. I know it wouldn't stand under this administration, but any information you can shed on what the last administration was doing incorrectly would be helpful for us going forward. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Walkinshaw, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman Garbarino, for convening today's hearing and for our witnesses for joining us. Last week, I visited Minnesota with 27 other members of the House, where we heard from community leaders and members about the brutal, masked secret police that have been unleashed in their streets. They've shackled peaceful protesters, pulled guns on children, dragged pregnant mothers, and, as we all know, shot an unarmed mother in the face. Just yesterday in Minnesota, we heard from local law enforcement leaders that their off-duty officers, United States citizens, have been targeted by ICE. Had the department honored the committee's request, and I appreciate the chairman for making the request for acting ICE Director Lyons to testify today, I, and I think others, would have questioned him directly about his role in escalating tensions by deploying thousands of masked immigration officers, I should say masked and minimally trained immigration officers in Minnesota. With that said, I want to just discuss another one of this administration's failures. Last year, President Trump's DOGE and its chainsaw wiped out 72,000 federal jobs just here in the National Capital Region, which includes the district in Virginia that I represent, including a lot of cyber professionals. These are patriotic Americans who chose a career of public service, and instead they were fired, pushed out, or moved to
support this administration's mass deportation effort that's currently, as I noted, harassing U.S. citizens, including law enforcement officers in Minnesota. CISA, as we know, is the lead agency to defend and mitigate against threats to our cyber and physical infrastructure, lost a third of its workforce. 1 year ago at CISA, much of its career workforce was bullied into quitting. They were threatened with rifts that would not come with any severance. So-called probationary employees were fired. In the recent government shutdown, some CISA staff even received the illegal RIF notices, and court after court after court has determined that those attempted RIFs were illegal. Others were moved to ICE or to CBP or told they'd be fired if they didn't accept their transfer orders. CISA has cut support to critical partners like the multi-state ISAC and the election infrastructure ISAC, while the department has dismantled key oversight and prevention efforts, including eliminating the Cyber Safety Review Board. And the leaders behind the pre-ransomware notification and secure by design initiatives have left. At a time of persistent and growing cyber threats from malign foreign actors, these choices by the president and the secretary have weakened our defenses and left our critical systems and infrastructure more exposed and the American people more vulnerable. Dr. Gottumukkala, has CISA conducted an analysis to prove that its current staffing levels enable mission delivery? Have you done that analysis?
Congressman, thank you for the question. Please allow me to clarify. I think capability, somehow I think the narrative comes across in the media as these 800 people just left overnight. That's not the case. This is a workforce transition program. People who participated in the program did so voluntarily. And
yeah, I don't agree with that, but just answer the question, please. Have you conducted an analysis to prove that your current staffing levels today enable you to accomplish your mission? Where is that analysis?
Congressman, the work that we do is mission focused, which means capability is measured by outcomes, not headcount. And CISA remains fully operational from what we do, from securing the nation from.
So you have not conducted an analysis. Is there an analysis you can provide to the committee to determine you can meet your mission with the workforce you have today?
Congressman, we support every single statutory authority given to us, and we support every single one of that for the mission.
Okay, thank you.
That has not been compromised by any.
Okay, so there is no analysis. Funding for the multi-state ISAC has been eliminated. I referenced it. I'm sure you know a lot about it. The center provided no-cost services for cash-strapped state and local governments, especially small local governments in rural communities who don't have the ability to do this on their own. Has the threat landscape against state and local governments diminished or increased over the past year? Has it gone up or down?
Congressman, thank you for the question. And again, consistent with all ISACs, there is no federal funding, but we do work with all the ISACs in releasing the joint security products. We deployed automated communication for the joint cyber defense collaborative, expanding the real-time communication.
Thank you. You've managed to answer none of my questions. You haven't answered a single question, but thank you for coming.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Fong, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the panelists for the work that you do. I want to start with Undersecretary Allende. The threats our nation faces require us to continue developing new technological capabilities. Specifically, my district is home to the Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake, which supports the Navy's research, development, acquisition, and testing and evaluation of advanced weapon systems. Recently, the Department of Homeland Security's Science and Technology Directorate, in coordination with the U.S. Coast Guard and the Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons Division at China Lake, tested a contactless vessel stopping capability prototype that uses high-energy radio frequencies to safely stop small, non-compliant vessels, which is an exciting new development. How do S&T's partnerships with key military bases enhance testing and development efforts?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. At S&T, we take a whole of component, whole of DHS approach to understanding the needs and requirements. We take a whole of government approach to reduce duplication and create efficiencies. Often some of the systems that are developed for other departments, including the Department of War, may have a civilian application, or the core technology may be transferable. Obviously, there are very different mission sets, but the technology you're referring to is very promising. We would like to do some continued testing on it to make sure that it is suitable for deployment. But it is a concern that I heard both in my engagements with Coast Guard and from CBP and others in my trip to California this past week.
Well, you're always welcome in California. So certainly, if you're in the area, please, we'd love to roll out the red carpet for you. I wonder if you can describe how S&T is working with private sector vendors to ensure technologies being developed, procured, and deployed are up to date, incorporate the latest innovations, and avoid becoming obsolete before they are fielded. So, what does the procurement process look like? Are there changes that need to be made? Certainly, as mentioned before, we have major special events occurring in the United States with the World Cup and the Olympics, and the celebration of America's 250th birthday. How can we facilitate the spread of these technologies and deploy them ahead of these events and for any threat that exists?
Sure. Thank you for the question. The private sector is able to address a number of problems that government just really could not do on its own in many aspects. And it's generally wise to look for those technologies and the applications that they might be suitable for. We do that soup to nuts at the department. We're always looking for opportunities to bring in existing technologies. I guess my answer to you is if there's something that can be applied, our preference will be to either adopt it or adapt it for our use, rather than going through a long research development timeline. Now, in fairness, there are those areas where there is no private sector market, and in those instances, it's suitable for us to take lead on that.
Can you expound on that? What type of capabilities? I mean, does a demand signal have to be provided for the private sector to address some of the department needs, or is it something that is solely focused within the department that you just prefer to have it in-house?
I'd say there's two sets of demand signals. There's something the private sector has developed with a private market in mind that may have a very good government application, and there's the alternative, which is something that is a almost uniquely government niche that ultimately has a private sector application. And in those instances, we'd be looking to do tech transfer at the earliest possible moment, and that's private sector. For the components, our operational delivery is our goal, and so by either method, we look to get out in the field.
Do you have a particular time frame you look at when you're trying to deploy it with your processes that in place?
ASAP is really my preference. There's some nuance to that, of course. You want to make sure that it is properly tested, evaluated, and in a position to be deployed. And we have very smart people that get after that issue.
Sure. Well, I know that when it comes to the threats that our country faces, the technology is going to be critically important for us to address that, both on the private sector side and on the research and development side. So any way we can facilitate the deployment of promising technologies, please let us know. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Van Epps, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for sharing with us today. This department is tasked with the most sacred mission to protect the American homeland. Our witnesses today represent vital aspects of that mission, and I'm grateful for your time. I'm going to build off of my colleagues' questions, Mr. Ayande. S&T's Office of Safety Act Implementation, OSAI, plays an important role in mitigating litigation risk to incentivize the private sector to acquire and deploy anti-terrorism technologies. Building off of previous questions, what additional resources, if any, does OSAI require in order to process applications for designated and certified anti-terrorism technologies at a speed sufficiently appropriate to keep pace with emerging threats and technologies?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. I would like to ask for an opportunity to come back and brief you on this. I can tell you we currently have a large number of applications pending. We've had a 50% increase in applications, which we attribute to FIFA, LA 2028, and America 250. and we're working very diligently to get through those. I have some time actually scheduled towards the end of this week to see how many we can get through. But certainly it is top of mind and not something that we take lightly.
Great, thank you. And to what extent does OSAI perform evaluations of technologies that have already received Safety Act certifications or other Safety Act designations to ensure that these technologies remain effective at mitigating terrorist acts? And is OSAI adequately resourced to complete necessary reevaluation processes in a timely fashion?
Thank you, Congressman. There are different sets of certifications that are offered by OSAI, and each of these is on a renewal review period. So we periodically revisit the applications. There's a whole host of requirements that are part of that, could include evaluations of sites and so on. So yeah, we do try to keep with the times and the emerging threats. If I think that answers your question.
Great, thank you. Pivoting here, and this will be for Administrator McNeill. TSA announced at the end of last year that passengers who do not present a real ID or acceptable form of ID at the TSA security checkpoint would have to pay a $45 fee for a 10-day travel authorization under a new program called Confirm ID, which we've talked about some today. With the new program starting February 1st, the committee has concerns about whether TSA holds the requisite authority to levy this fee and build out a contract for an alternative travel authorization system. Can you please explain to the committee why this Confirm ID program is necessary, how this program does not go against TSA's goal to enforce Real ID compliance and uphold identification security, since it would allow individuals without proper identification to still travel simply by paying the fee?
Thank you for your question, Congressman. When we rolled out enforcement of Real ID in May of 2025, we saw approximately 93% compliance rate. Today, it's around 94%. The Confirm ID is really meant to address the continuing non-compliant population, so about 6% of what we see through our airports every day. It's been 20 years since Congress passed this law, and for folks to show up with a non-compliant ID is a draw on our resources operationally. And that cost today is borne by the taxpayer, and so the fee is really meant to defray the cost of us processing people who don't show up with the acceptable form of ID, ensure that they do not pose a threat to our skies, and have the fee borne by the non-compliant population.
And could you just talk a little bit about how TSA determined the $45 would cover the cost of a travel authorization for a passenger without an acceptable ID? I believe the original amount considered was $18.
Absolutely. So, with any fee that we issue, there is a fee study that we conduct. There was a realization that we did not include all of the costs in the initial assessment. That's part of our fee revision process. And we will do so on a recurrent basis to ensure that the fee reflects the cost of carrying out that program.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, gentleman. Yields back. I will now entertain, and I appreciate my colleagues waiting until the end. I'll entertain UC motions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record a staffing chart provided by CISA that shows 65 employees have been transferred out of CISA in management-directed reassignments since January 2025, January 20th, 2025, and that CISA has lost 998 employees since January 2025, nearly 1/3 of its total personnel. Further, I ask unanimous consent to include in the record 2 articles describing how TSA and CISA are contributing to ICE's deportation push on behalf of Mrs. Ramirez.
That objection. Well, I want to thank you all, the witnesses, for being here today. And one of the main things we do here is oversight, and this was the first of many hearings. And you all run very important departments under Department of Homeland Security. And I appreciate your willingness and your time coming here today. And the members of the committee may have some additional questions. I know I do. And we would ask that all the witnesses respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7E, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, this committee stands adjourned.
Think that.
Well, now you're seeing, since correct.
What makes you think that?
Well, now you're seeing, since I've posted that video, lots of other people have started to go to other locations, for instance, in Ohio or in Maine or in California. They're also seeing the similar fraud take place in other daycares, for instance, in a lot of other locations.
Yeah, I have a particular interest in California, being from that state, and we know that there's been a lot of fraud. There was $32.6 billion that's been confirmed in unemployment insurance fraud. There's 1.2 million fraudulent community college applications. Have you gotten any sense, or have you seen any signs there that sort of are similar to what aroused your suspicions in Minnesota?
Yeah, and fraud in California might be worse than the fraud in Minnesota.
What makes you say that?
Well, $24 billion went missing for homelessness. They've been trying to build this train for years, yet there's hardly anything to prove for that. Fires.
Yeah, those are good points. So you look at let's run through a couple of those because I mentioned the areas where we have confirmed fraud, but then you also have these areas where you have so much spending, and then we look at what results from that spending, and there's nothing. So $24 billion in homelessness, and yet the homeless population went up, and a state audit found that they couldn't even figure out where the money went or what the outcomes linked to that spending were. Is that something that is kind of a red flag for you?
Yeah, it's a major red flag, and you don't even have to be smart to be able to know that that's a red flag.
Well, unfortunately, our state legislators haven't managed to figure that out, or at least the governor hasn't. So what are you saying about him?
They're not smart. No, but yeah, I mean, it's so obvious, and that's what we saw in Minnesota is how complicit the government has been in enabling this fraud to happen. Quality Learning Center had over 90 violations, yet they continue to give that daycare $1.9 million.